We're going to be looking at what examiners do and what they're looking for in a good thesis, your thesis. So examiners actually only see the thesis. They have a proxy sense through the thesis of all the research you did, all the stumbling blocks you got over with, your fascination with the work. They probably have no idea how long it took you or whether you restarted 3 times. They don't know about the journey. They only know about the finished building, the finished thesis. And so one of the main things they're looking for is for it to tell a story of the decisions you made, justifying not using this theory but using that theory, explaining the limitations of working with this group of people or that process, why you did what you did, how you did it, why it matters, what it contributes. So that kind of story. And they also want to look for a coherent red thread of an argument. You started out with a fascination that you turned into a research question, maybe 4 questions. You theorized all of this. You got the right methodology and methods and the ethical approval to undertake the research that helps you address the questions. You know what you found. You analyzed your data. You theorized this analysis. You can make some statements about what you've constructed or found, which start to address your questions, and you round it all off in a conclusion that makes statements about the factual conclusions, the additions to knowledge, the changing of the knowledge that we've got, and conceptual conclusions, how we understand something differently. What I just outlined is the kind of coherence that an examiner is looking for as they pick up your thesis. They've only got the title to go on at the moment. They then find the research questions and they want to read your enthusiasm, theorized practice, and your understanding of what it is that you've constructed or found. So one of the first pieces of research, which was looking at what are examiners looking for, was conducted by Richard Winter at Anglia Polytechnic University about 20 or 30 years ago, 20 years ago. And he came up, or his group came up, with 4 characteristics: coherence, originality, intellectual rigor, and publishability. The coherence is just something I spoke about just now. So every bit fits. You haven't got any excess data that you're not using. You haven't got any excess literature that's not focused on addressing your question, theorizing the work that you're doing. You haven't got loads and loads of findings that don't relate to the questions that you asked. The coherence of the whole and the way in which you argue and tell your story through the thesis is what they're looking for. They're looking for enough originality. Maybe you've asked a similar question to somebody else, but you've asked it in a different context, you've asked it a different way. Know what your originality is. That's part of your contribution to knowledge. They're also, as I said, they're looking for publishability. So they're looking for a well-written thesis. So it hangs together, it's got a good, clear argument. It feels confident, it knows what it's contributing. So all those characteristics, intellectual rigor, publishability, coherence, originality, check your own work and see if you can actually see it yourself and then make it explicit for the examiner. There's been a lot of other work done, mainly initially in Australia, that looked at examiner reports, because examiners write reports on your thesis. They write reports as soon as they've read it, and then if you're going to have a viva, an oral exam, the 2 examiners will put their reports together and consider what questions to ask you. If they never meet, if there is no viva, then it's what the reports go in, and those are seen by perhaps a committee who makes some kind of judgment based on the examiner reports. The examiners have only seen your thesis, your written thesis, and the committee makes a decision about, what corrections you have to do, as suggested also by the examiner, and whether you pass, in what sense, how long it will take you to do the corrections, whether you have to revise and resubmit, all the kind of different categories that examiners come up with. So the role of the examiner then is really to say that you have achieved something original enough, publishable enough, rigorous enough, and coherent enough. They're also looking then at specific characteristics in the text. What they want to see from you is that you've understood the question that you're undertaking, that your work is well presented, it's not shoddy, that's not filled with typos, it's not filled with potentially data errors as well, that it is well argued, it's a well presented, well argued, not shoddy, and it knows what's original, and it knows about its contribution, and it expresses those things. So those sorts of characteristics, then I just elaborated further from Richard Winter's work, have been discovered by people analysing examiner reports when they've made comments about things like illuminated writing or the excitement they had when they saw this new piece of knowledge. We want them to be able to read our work and see how well it hangs together and how it makes this kind of contribution. So it's important that you go over it and over it again, test it out with a friend, test it with your supervisor, see that your argument is clear, that your steps of your research are coherent and clear, and that the claims you make at the end about answering or addressing your research questions and about the importance of your contribution to knowledge are well expressed and clear. If English is your third, fourth or fifth language, before you send the work into an examiner, it's a good idea to take it through an English editor who might well make some of the phrases you use more acceptable to examiners. These people are not doing your work for you. Very definitely do not use AI in order to write your thesis, because that is not going to do justice to your research. But you can, of course, use systems like Grammarly to help you make sure that you've got your apostrophes in the right place. We can use artificial intelligence systems to help tidy up some spelling issues and some grammar issues. But we cannot use artificial intelligence to write our thesis, because we did it. We thought it through. We had stumbling blocks. We had moments where we understood something really difficult. We had the exciting moments where we saw something in the data that we didn't expect, and we had to go back to a theory in order to understand it. These journeys of excitement and discovery are yours. So expressing them as well as you can so that you convey that enthusiasm and that coherence to the examiner. And then you will get whatever corrections, you will always get some corrections to do to make it a little bit better.